She said it like I was trash. "You've been a guest here all along." Then she handed me a 30-day eviction notice. In the house my father built with his own hands. The house I've maintained for 20 years. I paid the taxes. I fixed the roof. She sipped her tea and smiled while stripping everything from me, even calling a buyer to close the sale the morning before my inheritance clause kicked in. But what she didn't know, at midnight, the deed would auto-transfer right out from under her. She thought I'd panic. She forgot I file everything, and I mean everything. Key the printer. Open the county portal. Let's see how she handles illegal ownership flipping while she's mid-fraud. My name is Michael Carver, and I'm 45 years old. Every morning, I sweep the porch of my father's hand-built house before heading to work, just as he did. My stepmother Veronica, who moved in after Dad passed, watches from behind her coffee cup, muttering about property values. Frank, Dad's oldest friend and our retired notary, stops by weekly, his eyes always landing on the perfectly maintained tax records I keep in Dad's old filing cabinet. I still remember Dad teaching me his meticulous way with documents. Double-stapled, date-stamped in the margins, filed in triplicates. The cedar walls hold 20 years of our quiet coexistence. Though lately Veronica's comments about wasted space cut sharper than her breakfast knife. My fingers trace the hairline crack between the living room floorboards, a reminder that even the strongest foundations can be tested. But let me start from the beginning. The morning started like any other, with me nursing my coffee at the oak table Dad built when I was just a kid. You know that peaceful moment when steam rises from your mug and the house is still quiet? That's what I lived for. But some mornings change everything, don't they? I heard Veronica's heels clicking against the hardwood before I saw her. She always dressed like she was heading to a business meeting, even at 7 a.m. The manila envelope in her manicured hands should have been my first warning. "Morning, Michael." Her smile didn't reach her eyes as she slid into the chair across from me. "I have something for you." The envelope scraped across the oak grain like a dull knife. Inside was a stack of legal papers, the top one bold with red text, "Notice to vacate." My coffee turned bitter in my mouth. What's this supposed to be? 30 days notice. Veronica stirred her tea, the spoon clinking against china like a tiny bell. "I'm giving you until the end of the month to find new accommodations." The room felt smaller suddenly, like the walls were closing in. "This is my house. Dad left it to me in his will." "Oh?" She raised an eyebrow. "You mean that vague promise about inheriting when you turned 45? I hate to burst your bubble, but you've been a guest here all along. My name's on the deed." My hands were steady as I flipped through the papers. Dad's voice echoed in my head. "Always keep your dignity, son. It's the one thing no one can take unless you let them." "Show me the will," I said, keeping my voice level. Because I remember exactly what Dad promised. Veronica pulled out another set of documents, these ones stamped with a lawyer's seal. "Here's everything you need to see. The house is mine, legally and completely. Feel free to have your own attorney review it." The kitchen clock ticked louder than usual, each second hammering behind my eyes. 20 years of maintaining this place, paying taxes, fixing leaks, preserving Dad's work. And she wanted to erase it all with a stack of papers. I reached for my phone, careful not to let her see how my fingers trembled. Quickly, I photographed every page of the notice while she sipped her tea. The familiar motion of filing, something Dad taught me, helped calm my racing heart. Each photo went into my organized folders, right alongside 20 years of tax receipts. "I'll need your response in writing," Veronica said, standing up. "And Michael, don't make this difficult. We both know how these things end." Once she left, I grabbed my notepad and wrote Frank on a yellow sticky note. Dad's old friend would know what was really filed all those years ago. I held that note like a lifeline, studying Veronica's packet one more time. The signature lines caught my eye. Perfectly filled out, professionally witnessed. But something nagged at me. Dad was too careful, too thorough to leave loose ends. I remembered him hunched over his desk, double-checking every document, marking up margins with his precise handwriting. "What did you file, Dad?" I whispered, running my finger over the notary stamps. What clause did she miss? The morning sun streamed through the kitchen window, highlighting the dust motes dancing above the scattered papers. Somewhere in the county records, in Dad's original documents, lay the truth. I just had to find it. Act 1. Chapter 1. I stepped out onto the front porch, needing fresh air and distance from that kitchen table ambush. You ever notice how morning light can make dust look almost beautiful? It was cutting through the air in ribbons, catching on the worn wooden rails Dad had sanded smooth decades ago. My hands shook less as I dialed Frank's number. 3 rings. Then that familiar gravel pit voice that always took me back to summer afternoons watching him and Dad work on the garage addition. "Michael, been expecting your call, actually." Frank's tone steadied me like an old foundation beam. "Frank, I need—" My voice caught. Had to clear my throat. "Veronica just served me eviction papers. Says she owns the house outright. Breathe, son." I could picture him settling into his workshop chair, the one with the cracked leather seat. "Your father came to see me about 6 months before he passed. Had me notarize some interesting paperwork." My pulse quickened. "What kind of paperwork? Got your old tax receipts handy? Need the deed packet number from the corner stamp." I fumbled through my phone photos until I found last year's receipt. "Yeah, got it right here. P447891. The sound of shuffling papers carried through the phone, followed by Frank's thoughtful, "Just as I remembered," he said. "Your dad filed a protective deed transfer clause. Smart man, your father. Always thinking ahead. What exactly does that mean?" "It means the house transfers automatically to you at midnight on the anniversary of his passing. County Recorder's Office handles it electronically these days. 12:01 a.m. System updates if all the original filings are still clean." I grabbed the porch railing, steadying myself. "When's the anniversary?" 10 days from now. March 15th. The morning air went thick. 10 days. Everything I'd built my life around hung on 10 days. Every nail Dad drove, every board he cut, every quiet morning coffee, all of it balanced on less than 2 weeks. "You still there, Michael?" "Yeah." I pulled out my pocket calendar, the one Dad always insisted a man should carry. 10 days. With my pen, I drew a grid of 10 boxes, each one a day between me and either keeping my home or losing everything. Found myself writing little notes in each square. Food, light, patience. Like I was rationing out hope along with basic needs. "Listen," Frank said, his voice going softer. "Your father knew what he was doing. He set this up clean, documented everything. But what? 10 days is a long time when someone's trying to push you out. If the pressure gets too heavy, I'll handle it." My pen hovered over the last box in my grid. "I know you will. Just remember, I'm here if you need backup." Your dad would have wanted that. I circled the final square and wrote midnight inside it. "Thanks, Frank, really. One more thing," he added. "Keep every scrap of paper she gives you. Every notice, every threat. Your father taught you well about documentation, didn't he? Double stapled and date stamped in the margins." The memory brought a slight smile despite everything. "That's right. Now hold that line, son. 10 days. After hanging up, I stared at my calendar grid. 10 little boxes between having a home and having nothing. 10 days until that midnight trigger either saved or destroyed everything Dad built. I traced my finger over each square, feeling the indents my pen had left in the paper. The morning light was stronger now, burning away those peaceful dust ribbons, leaving everything stark and clear. Right now, sitting on Dad's porch, I had a home. In 10 days, I'd either still have one or be out on the street. When I stepped back inside, muscle memory sent my finger to the light switch. Click. Nothing. I tried the kitchen. Same dead response. A quick check of the breaker box confirmed what I already knew. Veronica had called the power company. You ever notice how silence gets heavier when you're trying not to let it beat you? I dug out Dad's old camping gear from the basement, setting up a portable stove on the counter where he'd taught me to make pancakes. The propane hiss brought back memories of fishing trips, him showing me how to heat soup without scorching the bottom. Now I was using those same skills to keep fed in my own kitchen. Funny how life circles back sometimes. Cold water splashed against my face as I tried to shave by the window light. Had to angle the mirror just right to catch enough reflection. Nicked myself twice, but I'd be damned if I'd walk around looking unkempt. That's what she wanted. Visible proof I was cracking. "It's just shameful, really." Veronica's voice carried through my open window. She was holding court at the curb with Mrs. Peterson from next door, living off family charity well into middle age. Some people just never learn to stand on their own. My jaw clenched, but I kept my strokes steady with the razor. Document, don't detonate, that was the game plan. I grabbed my phone and started taking screenshots. The power company's disconnection notice, the water bill showing her name as requester, timestamps of her sidewalk performance. Each one went into a folder labeled Timeline. Evidence doesn't need emotion to work. My phone buzzed. Text from Frank. "Remember, son, weathering the storm is strategy, not surrender." Your dad knew about long games. He was right. Dad always said patience beats pressure if you've got truth on your side. So I grabbed the mop and bucket, filled it with water I'd heated on the camping stove. The kitchen floor needed cleaning anyway. And damn if I'd let her turn my home into some kind of squatter's den. The floorboards gleamed as I worked, each stroke echoing off the walls. Through the window, I caught Veronica watching, that landlord's appraisal in her eyes. She came inside, heels clicking on my fresh-mopped surface. "Ceramic tile would update this space nicely," she said to no one in particular. "The buyers will appreciate modern finishes." I kept mopping, kept quiet. Let her play her game while I documented mine. Every barb, every power play, every attempt to paint me as some parasitic drifter. It all went into the timeline folder. Low profile, high record keeping, zero outbursts. That was my mantra now. The afternoon sun was cooling when I headed out for a walk, trying to clear my head. Exercise helps you think straight when everything's tilting sideways. But coming back up the drive, something new caught my eye. A real estate sign stood planted in Dad's front lawn like some kind of claim stake. Open house, Saturday 10 a.m. 4 p.m., all offers considered. My stomach twisted. The sign might as well have read, "Come watch a family legacy get dismantled." How many strangers would parade through Dad's rooms, measuring spaces he'd built for love, not profit? How many would run their hands over his handiwork, seeing dollar signs instead of decades of care? I snapped a photo of the sign, added it to my growing timeline. 9 days left until midnight. 9 days of watching people treat my home like merchandise. 9 days of holding my ground while Veronica tried to sell the floor out from under me. The sun hit the sign's metal post, throwing a long shadow across Dad's lawn. It pointed right at the front door like an arrow, like a question. How much more could I take before something had to break? Ever had to watch strangers poke through your memories like they're shopping at a yard sale? Saturday morning hit like a sucker punch. I'd barely finished my coffee when the first cars started lining up along the curb. Real estate vultures with clipboards and measuring tapes, couples in pressed slacks talking about potential, designers already sketching renovation plans in their minds. Each ring of the doorbell felt like someone testing the bars of my cage. Veronica played the perfect hostess. All pearls and practiced smiles. "The original hardwood runs throughout," she'd say, as if Dad hadn't spent 3 summers installing those floors himself. The kitchen could easily open up to create a more modern flow. Translation: tear out the walls Dad built to make room for some granite counter showcase. I planted myself near the stairwell, arms crossed, watching. That's where we kept the family photos. Dad's military medals, the growth marks he'd penciled on the wall tracking my height. Some things weren't for sale, no matter what paper Veronica waved around. How quickly could we close? A guy in an expensive suit directed the question at Veronica while his wife measured windows with her eyes. "Oh, we're wrapping up the final paperwork now," Veronica practically purred. "The property will be ready to transfer before month end. We can move very quickly for the right offer." My fingers twitched against my bicep. I pulled out my phone and started documenting. Photos of the sign-in sheet when Veronica wasn't looking. Timestamps of every guarantee she made about fast closings. The email to Frank practically wrote itself. 10:15 a.m., first showing, promised immediate availability. 1:45 p.m., assured investor group sale could close within weeks. Frank's response came back quick. "Keep tracking. Remember, midnight beats dawn every time." Your dad knew his timing. During a brief lull, I slipped upstairs to Dad's old workshop. His tool belt still hung on its peg, each pocket stretched to fit the tools he'd carried daily. I found myself arranging everything just how he'd kept it. Needle nose pliers on the left, carpenter pencils lined up by length, tape measure clipped just so. Small victories maybe, but they were mine. Playing with Daddy's toys? I hadn't heard Veronica follow me up. She leaned against the kitchen island, arms crossed, looking like a cat who'd cornered something. "Interesting. Actually," she said, "this works out perfectly. You can clear all this." She waved dismissively at Dad's tools. "Out early. I've got buyers ready to sign. We're closing at dawn on the 9th. The date hit me like ice water. The 9th. The day before Dad's anniversary. The day before midnight. Dawn? I kept my voice steady, though my pulse wasn't cooperating. 7 a.m. sharp. Her smile could have cut glass. Everything transfers first thing. Unless you've got some magic wand to wave. I waited until she clicked her way downstairs before pulling out my pocket calendar. Red pen felt right for this entry. Eve. Dawn closing? The question mark was smaller than I meant it to be. Everything hung on those few hours between her dawn deadline and midnight's promise. The county recorder's office updates at 12:01 a.m. If the system runs smooth, the deed transfers automatically. If anything hiccups, stalls, or glitches, well, You ever watch a house of cards collapse? One wrong breath, and the whole thing goes. Through the workshop window, I watched another wave of potential buyers cruise past. They looked up at Dad's handiwork with developers' eyes, probably already planning where to put their modernized whatever. 7 days left until Veronica's Dawn Showdown. 7 days to watch and wait, document and endure. I lined up those carpenter pencils one more time, each one straight as a soldier. Sometimes holding your ground means protecting the smallest pieces of what matters. You ever have one of those moments where defeat feels so heavy you can barely lift your head? That was me yesterday afternoon, staring at cardboard boxes I'd started filling with pieces. You ever notice how revenge is a dish best served with paperwork? For 3 solid days, I turned our dining room into mission control, surrounded by stacks of bank statements and a laptop that never slept. Every credit card charge Veronica had made using Dad's estate accounts stood out like neon signs. Spa weekends, designer handbags, even a Mediterranean cruise she'd taken last spring. I matched each transaction to statements, filed them by date, and backed everything up to a flash drive labeled insurance. "You're still here?" Veronica's voice dripped with mock surprise as she clicked through the living room in her designer heels. "I thought you'd have started moving by now." I kept my eyes on the screen, typing methodically while she paced behind me. Her phone was on speaker, her voice pitched to Carrie. "Yes, absolutely. We can do the closing tomorrow at dawn. The title will be completely clean, I assure you." The timestamp read 2:47 p.m. I created a new folder called Threats and saved an audio recording of her promise. You'd think someone planning to steal a house would be more careful with their words. Remember those old westerns where the good guy knows exactly when high noon's coming? That's how these days felt, except my showdown was set for midnight, and my ammunition was digital. I called Frank during my lunch break, keeping my voice low. "How sure are we about this transfer clause?" "Just double-checked it myself," he said, papers rustling in the background. "Filing number matches the recorder's index perfectly. It's still active, still set to trigger at midnight. She hasn't found it to challenge it." That night, I added one last tab to my evidence binder. County portal screenshots. The printer was loaded with fresh paper, ready to capture the exact moment ownership changed hands. You know that feeling when a storm's about to break? That's what it was like watching Veronica sweep through the kitchen at dusk, arranging pastries on the island counter like she was hosting a celebration. She placed a thick manila folder beside them, closing documents, I figured, and hummed while she worked. "Big day tomorrow," she chirped, not even looking my way. "You might want to be gone early. The new owners won't appreciate lingering." My jaw clenched, but I kept quiet. I had 3 alarms set on my phone. My laptop was fully charged, and the county recorder's website was open in my browser. The deed page showed her name under current owner, with Dad's original filing date still listed below. Just a few more hours. The house creaked and settled into darkness around 11:40 p.m. I sat at my desk, the blue glow of the screen painting shadows on the wall. The cursor blinked steadily under the ownership field like a metronome counting down the seconds. Ever watch a website loading bar when your whole life depends on it? At 11:59:50, I clicked refresh. The little wheel started spinning, around and around, each rotation carrying 20 years of memories. Dad's legacy, my future. Then it just stopped. The screen froze, my heart along with it. I stared at that motionless wheel, barely breathing. Somewhere in the house, Veronica's designer alarm clock softly chimed midnight. Have you ever watched your entire future balance on a spinning circle? There I sat, hunched over my laptop at midnight, while that cursed refresh wheel kept turning like some digital roulette. The county recorder's website had picked one hell of a moment to test its servers. The old grandfather clock in the hallway, the one Dad restored the summer I turned 12, ticked so loud I could feel each second pulse through my chest. Funny how time can stretch like taffy when you're waiting for something this big. I remember Dad telling me that clock needed exactly 147 turns of the winding key. No more, no less. He was always precise like that, especially with anything that measured time. My phone buzzed. Frank's message was simple, steady, easy for him to say. He wasn't watching 2 decades of history hang in digital limbo. My fingers itched to pound the keyboard, but I forced them still. Instead, I clicked reload with the same careful rhythm Dad used when setting his table saw depth. Deliberate, measured, calm. The desk lamp cast just enough light to work by, and I held my phone ready, snapping photos of each status screen. If the system was dragging its feet, I wanted proof of every stuttered step. The laptop fan kicked into high gear, humming like it was trying to coax the county's ancient servers back to life. You learn breathing tricks when life hits hard. 4 counts in through the nose, hold for 4, 4 out through the mouth, hold for 4. I'd used it at Dad's funeral during the layoffs at work back in '08, and now, watching this screen like it held the launch codes for nuclear war. Connection error flashed across the monitor, and my stomach dropped. But before panic could really sink its teeth in, the page bounced back to the search field. The deed packet number still sat there, patient as ever, waiting to be processed. My hands shook slightly as I typed in the parcel number one more time, each digit feeling like it weighed a ton. I hit enter and pulled my hands back, setting them flat on the desk. Dad always said rushing only made things messier, whether you were hanging drywall or waiting on important news. The loading bar crept forward like a caterpillar on Valium. Start. Stop. Wiggle forward. Freeze. The clock struck 12:01. The screen went white. In that moment, the house felt like it was holding its breath. Even the usual creaks and settles seemed to pause, waiting to see what the next pixel would bring. The fan in my laptop whirred louder, as if it was working overtime to process the weight of this moment. I could hear soft classical music drifting from Veronica's room upstairs, probably setting the mood for her dawn closing. The irony would have made me laugh if my throat wasn't so dry. Here we sat, separated by 1 floor and about 8 hours, both waiting for very different versions of morning. The white screen pulsed slightly, pixels shifting like they were rearranging themselves for whatever came next. Every muscle in my body tensed, ready for either celebration or devastation. 20 years of maintenance, property taxes, and memories, balanced on whatever would load next. Dad's voice echoed in my head. Patience beats pressure, son. Always has. He'd said that while teaching me to sand wood, how rushing only created more work in the end. So I sat there, hands still flat on the desk, watching that white screen like it was about to reveal the secrets of the universe. The grandfather clock ticked on, marking each second with the same steady precision it had shown since Dad first hung its weights. Whatever came next would come on its own schedule, just like he'd planned it. All I could do was wait, and trust that his attention to detail would prove as reliable as that old clock's mechanism. The white screen finally resolved into crisp black text, and I swear the words burned straight through my retinas and into my soul. Grantee, Michael Carver. Just like that, Dad's plan clicked into place like the last tumbler in a lock. My hands weren't shaking anymore as I hit print, twice, because Dad always taught me to have a backup. The printer hummed to life, each page emerging like a verdict from on high. I saved the screen as a PDF, probably clicking the mouse harder than necessary. But some moments deserve a little extra force, don't they? The email to Frank practically wrote itself. Just the screenshot and "live" in the subject line. His response came back so fast I wondered if he'd been holding his phone like a lucky charm. Move. I grabbed the first printout and slid it into one of those clear sleeves Dad used to keep in his workshop, the kind he'd use for important blueprints or permits. The plastic crinkled under my fingers as I walked to the front door, each step feeling lighter than the last. Found the tape right where it always was, in the drawer by the coat rack. Dad's organization habits were still paying dividends, even now. The storm door's glass was cool against my knuckles as I positioned the sleeve at perfect eye level. Had to smile thinking about Dad's voice in my head. Presentation matters, son. Even bad news should hang straight. Well, this wasn't bad news, at least not for me. A phone alarm chirped down the hall. Veronica's wake-up call for her grand finale. The timing was almost poetic. Headlights swept across the getcha front windows, cutting through the blinds like searchlights. Right on schedule. Dawn's eager buyer, ready to claim their prize. I heard dress shoes on the porch steps, climbing with that confident rhythm of someone who thinks they're about to close a deal. The briefcase in the buyer's hand caught the porch light, clicking with each step like it was counting out dollar bills. My hand settled on the doorknob, and I took one deep breath. In through the nose, out through the mouth, just like always. The door opened smooth and quiet, just like Dad had hung it. The county updated at 12:01, I said, keeping my voice as level as still water. I could hear Veronica's heels clicking around the corner before I saw her. She had that folder clutched to her chest like a shield, wearing the same smile she'd practiced in the hallway mirror yesterday. But when her eyes caught the paper in the storm door, that smile flickered like a dying bulb. The buyer leaned in close to the glass, squinting at the printout. Their eyes bounced between the document and Veronica like a ping-pong ball picking up speed. The silence in that hallway got thick enough to cut with one of Dad's old chisels. You know that moment just before a summer storm breaks? When the air gets so heavy you can taste the lightning coming? That's what it felt like watching the buyer's face change as they read those words out loud. Grantee, Michael Carver. The echo of those words seemed to hang in the air like smoke, and I swear I could hear Dad's old clock ticking louder than ever, counting down to whatever was about to explode. The buyer's voice cracked on my name like thin ice. Their fingers snapped the briefcase shut with a click that echoed through the morning quiet. The sound of a deal dying before breakfast. What exactly am I looking at here? The buyer's words came out slow and careful, like someone backing away from a trap they'd nearly stepped in. Veronica's practiced smile went rigid. Oh, there must be some confusion. Just a small paperwork delay. Delay? The buyer cut her off, already taking that first step backward. This isn't a delay, ma'am. This is exposure to fraud litigation. Each word landed like a hammer on a nail. You're trying to sell property you don't own. I watched 20 years of Veronica's scheming collapse in real time. Her makeup couldn't hide the color draining from her face. I can explain, she started, but the buyer was already halfway down the porch steps. Save it for your lawyer, they called over their shoulder, briefcase swinging with each quick step. I'll be notifying my firm about this attempted transaction. You ever notice how a car door slamming sounds different when someone's making a getaway? There's this extra bit of force behind it, like they're trying to shut out more than just the morning air. The buyer's engine revved hard enough to scatter the birds from Dad's old maple tree. I peeled the deed copy off the storm door, smooth and careful. No need to rush now that the moment had passed. The plastic sleeve slid perfect into that binder I'd been building, right behind those county portal screenshots. Felt right having it all in one place. Neat and organized like Dad would have wanted. My phone buzzed, Frank letting me know he was 5 minutes out. Sure enough, his truck rolled up right on schedule. That familiar diesel rumble that always meant backup had arrived. He climbed out holding a brown envelope I recognized from Dad's old filing cabinet, nodding like we were about to start a regular day's work. Morning, Michael, he said, calm as Sunday. Thought these might come in handy. He patted the envelope, and I could see the edge of Dad's original paperwork peeking out. All those careful date stamps and double staples standing guard over the truth. We walked into the kitchen where Veronica's closing celebration sat abandoned, pastries arranged on Dad's old serving plates like they were waiting for a party that would never start. The sight almost made me laugh. Almost. Courthouse opens in 40 minutes, Frank said, checking his watch. Might be smart to get this all logged while the ink's still wet, so to speak. I nodded, already thinking through the steps. Filing acknowledgement of the transfer first? And a formal complaint about the attempted sale, Frank added. Get it all documented before anyone starts spinning stories. Through the window, I could see Veronica in her car, engine idling like she couldn't decide whether to run or fight. The steering wheel probably felt about as useful as her lawyer's promises right about then. I gathered up our ammunition, the binder full of evidence, Frank's envelope of originals, and my old thermos of coffee because some battles call for caffeine. Frank helped me double-check everything, methodical as ever. We could hear Veronica's car engine whining higher as we locked up the house. Ready? Frank asked, holding the truck door. I took one last look at Dad's front porch, remembering all those summer evenings we'd spent there planning and building. Truth doesn't need much prep time, I said, climbing in. It just needs good timing. The truck's engine turned over strong and sure, and I watched Veronica's rearview mirror catch the sunrise as we pulled out. The courthouse was waiting, its records room ready to stamp fact into history before anyone could try rewriting it. The courthouse lobby hit me with that familiar mix of paper and printer toner the moment we walked in. You know that smell. Like bureaucracy has its own perfume. Frank and I joined the short morning line at the records counter, our binder and envelope ready for their moment in the fluorescent light. The clerk, Barbara according to her nameplate, had that seen-it-all efficiency of someone who'd processed enough drama to fill a library. How can I help you gentlemen today? She asked, fingers already hovering over her keyboard. We need to file acknowledgement of an updated deed record, Frank said, sliding the county portal printout across the counter, and lodge a formal complaint about an attempted property transfer that occurred this morning. Barbara's reading glasses came down on her chain as she studied the timestamp. 12:01 a.m. update. That's fresh. Her fingers started dancing across the keys. Parcel number? I recited it from memory. Funny how some numbers stick with you when they're tied to everything you care about. She pulled up the record, nodded at the screen, then reached for her stapler. The receipt made that satisfying chunk sound as it fastened to our binder's inside flap. One official anchor point secured. Now about that complaint, Frank continued, spreading out our timeline like he was dealing cards. Started with an eviction notice, 30 days. He tapped each document as he walked her through it. Utilities cut off here. Open house conducted here. And this morning's attempted closing was scheduled specifically to beat the midnight transfer. I opened the misappropriation section of our binder, pointing to the highlighted line items. We've also documented concerning financial activity. These charges here, luxury boutiques, first-class travel, all coded to estate accounts that should have been frozen. Barbara's eyebrows lifted slightly as she scanned the totals. This level of documentation helps, she said, reaching for a red, expedited review stamp. Given the attempted live title transfer this morning, we'll fast-track this through legal review. The stamp came down with the kind of authority that made me think of Dad's old date stamper. Somehow that parallel felt right. His careful record-keeping still protecting his legacy through inspiration. How long for the review? I asked. Usually takes, Barbara started, but movement near the lobby entrance caught her attention. I didn't need to turn around to know who it was. The click of those heels on marble had haunted our hallway for years. Veronica swept in like she owned the building, not just trying to steal my house. A man in an expensive suit trailed behind her, both of them carrying folders that looked fresh from a printer. Her smile had that brittle quality of someone whose plan A just crashed, but thought plan B was bulletproof. Just need to clear up a small glitch, I heard her telling Suitman as they headed for the legal services window. The system update clearly jumped the gun. Frank's hand settled on my shoulder. Steady as a level. Let them try, he muttered. Can't argue with timestamps. Barbara was already routing our file through their internal system. Each click of her mouse another brick in the wall of official record. The wall clock above her desk crept toward early afternoon, its red second hand cutting time into neat slices. I watched Veronica gesturing at her folder, that familiar tone of controlled urgency in her voice carrying across the lobby. Suitman nodded along, but his shoulders had that slight slope of someone not quite convinced by their own argument. Your acknowledgement should process first, Barbara told us, tapping her screen. Given the time sensitivity. After that, legal review of the complaint, typically. She glanced at Veronica, then back to us. Well, let's just say we prioritize cases involving active title disputes. The question hung in the air like dust in sunlight. Would official confirmation lock down before Veronica found another angle to work? I could almost hear Dad's voice. Patience, son. Good paperwork beats smooth talk every time. Frank and I settled onto one of those worn wooden benches outside hearing room B, the kind that's absorbed decades of anxious shifting. The courthouse's afternoon light filtered through tall windows, casting long shadows across the marble floor. My father would have appreciated the craftsmanship in those old benches. Solid oak, mortise and tenon joints that had held true through countless stories just like ours. A young staffer in a crisp blazer approached us. I'll need your binder for complete record, she said, holding out her hands. Standard procedure. I hesitated for just a heartbeat before passing it over. Funny how letting go of documentation, even briefly, can make your stomach clench. Your dad, Frank whispered beside me, his voice barely carrying over the hallway's ambient murmur. He always trusted paper more than speeches. Said anyone could talk pretty, but receipts tell the truth straight. I nodded, remembering Dad's meticulous filing system. Every receipt dated, every warranty logged. He'd have appreciated this moment, I replied, keeping my voice low. Everything documented, everything in order. The staffer returned carrying our binder and a stack of fresh copies, each one bearing that beautiful stamp of official record. The hearing officer would like to conduct a brief session, she explained, to memorialize the uncontested transfer and address any immediate concerns. She handed me a yellow sticky note with 2:30 p.m. written in precise numbers. Across the hall, Veronica stood at a high counter, rifling through her folder like she was searching for a winning lottery ticket she knew wasn't there. Her perfectly manicured nails flicked through pages with increasing urgency. I could read the tension in her shoulder line, the slow realization that smooth talk couldn't override timestamps and signatures. I opened our binder one last time, reviewing the misappropriation section we'd assembled. 4 transactions stood out like neon signs. A $12,000 renovation consultation that matched exactly with her Aspen ski trip. 3 separate property maintenance payments that aligned perfectly with her designer shopping sprees. I placed small red tabs next to each one, making them easy to reference. The paper trail was so clean it practically gleamed. 10-minute recess, announced another staffer, emerging from the hearing room. We're doing final verification checks on the recorder's index to ensure complete documentation. My hand tightened on the binder's spine, that familiar texture of worn leather that had protected our evidence through this whole ordeal. I looked over at Frank, finding that steady certainty in his eyes that had helped anchor me since I was a kid, learning to use Dad's tools. The hallway clock ticked forward with judicial precision. Each minute brought us closer to the moment when all this would be settled in black and white, when Dad's careful planning would finally bear fruit. You know that feeling when you're about to present something you know is rock solid? That's what was building in my chest, not nervous energy, but the calm certainty of preparation meeting opportunity. Veronica's heels clicked against marble as she paced near the water fountain, her folder now clutched against her chest like a shield. The sound reminded me of all those mornings in our kitchen, when she'd strut around making plans for her house. Funny how different those clicks seem now. More like a countdown than a power move. Frank leaned over, voice pitched just for my ears. "Remember what matters here," he said. "It's not just about winning. It's about honoring how your father did things. Clean, legal, documented." The office door opened again, and the staffer gestured toward the hearing room. "We're ready to begin," she announced. "Please bring all relevant documentation." I stood, feeling the weight of the binder in my hands. This wasn't just paper and ink anymore. It was 20 years of patience, Dad's careful planning, and the truth about Veronica's schemes, all bound together and ready for official eyes. Frank's steady presence at my shoulder felt like a continuation of Dad's support, channeled through years of friendship and trust. The hearing room waited, its polished table reflecting afternoon sun. I adjusted my tie, took a deep breath, and prepared to let the evidence speak for itself, just like Dad would have done. The hearing officer, a woman with steel-rimmed glasses and methodical hands, settled into her chair and opened our binder with practiced care. Have you ever watched someone read something that's about to change everything? There's a particular tension in the air, like the moment before a judge's gavel falls. "Let the record reflect," she began, her voice carrying that official weight that makes everything feel more real. "That at 12:01 a.m. on October 15th, the county recorder's automated system executed a properly filed deed transfer." She lifted the timestamp printout. "The property at 1247 Cedar Grove Lane transferred, without contest or encumbrance, to Michael Carver, in accordance with the original grantor's filed instructions." Veronica's face tightened like she'd bitten into something sour. Her lawyer shifted uncomfortably beside her, already seeing where this was heading. "Furthermore," the hearing officer continued, "the attempted property sale scheduled for dawn on October 15th is hereby recorded as void, with notation that the seller had no legal standing to execute such a transfer." She placed our documentation of the open house and dawn closing attempt into the official record. "This finding is final and binding." I felt Frank's hand pat my shoulder. Just once, quick and firm. 20 years of waiting, condensed into a few clear sentences that finally put the house question to rest. But we weren't done. The hearing officer turned to the next section of our binder, where those red tabs marked the financial evidence we'd gathered. "Regarding the submitted documentation of estate fund usage," she said, her tone sharpening, "this office finds sufficient cause for immediate referral to the Fraud Investigation Unit." She lifted a form I hadn't seen before. "Based on the clearly documented misappropriation of estate resources, I am issuing an emergency freeze notice for all accounts listed in this ledger, effective immediately." She pressed her stamp against the paper with a decisive thunk. "The freeze will remain in place pending full investigation." Veronica's lawyer started gathering his papers, but she grabbed his arm. "You can't just—" she started. But the hearing officer cut her off with a raised hand. "This proceeding is concluded," she stated firmly. "The orders will be posted within the hour. You may direct any further concerns through appropriate legal channels." We filed out into the hallway, where the afternoon sun slanted through tall windows. Frank and I watched as a clerk pinned the freeze notice to the public bulletin board, right at eye level where anyone walking past could read it. You know that feeling when you see something made official? How it hits different than just knowing it's true. That's what it was like, watching that paper go up. It didn't take long for word to spread. A couple who'd attended the open house passed through, pausing to read the notice. They whispered together, glancing back at Veronica, who stood rigid by her lawyer's side. One of them pulled out a phone, and I knew the neighborhood grapevine was about to light up. The drive home felt different, lighter somehow. Frank followed in his truck, and we pulled up just as dusk was settling in. The house stood quiet and solid, like it had been waiting for this moment too. I walked up to the porch while Frank grabbed the binder from his truck. The evening air carried that October crispness that always reminded me of Dad working late on weekend projects. Porch light on, sawdust catching the glow. Standing there, I reached out and placed my palm over the spot where Dad had carved his initials into the doorframe 30 years ago. The letters were worn smooth by time, but still clear as ever. R.C. Robert Carver. Simple. Lasting. True. Just like everything else he built. Frank came up beside me, and we both looked at those initials in the fading light. Greed builds nothing, I said quietly, feeling the truth of it in the solid wood under my hand. But honor preserves everything. My fingers traced those carved letters one more time, feeling the legacy of careful work and patient planning that had brought us to this moment. In the end, that's what had won the day. Not fancy tricks or loud claims, but the simple power of doing things right.